Good evening. Coming up on tonight's broadcast, Targeting Target. We show you the footage they don't want you to see. Our European correspondent Anita McNaught in London with author and filmmaker Michael Moore.
If Bush is in there another 4 years, the United States and the rest of this world is going to be in deep trouble.
Once again, Holmes crosses the line as a shocking new scandal unfolds. And we uncover the curse that may have cost us the World Cup. All that and your letters too. TV3's consumer show Target has been a big hit for the channel. Its hidden camera stings are a ratings bonanza. But what's it like to be on the receiving end of a sneaky camera setup? They say the camera never lies, but do Target's hidden camera trials always tell the truth? Some businesses featured on the show feel they were stitched up. A recent expose on clothes shops resulted in the employees of one shop suffering personal abuse, threats to family, and a general public backlash. Eating Media Lunch decided it was time to turn the tables. Tonight, we're targeting Target. We began by testing Target presenter Janet Wilson. She hosts Talkback on Radio Pacific, but is she up to the mark? Our hidden caller trials reveal all.
Eddie, you want to talk about Wickers this morning?
Yeah, I want to talk about these Wickers.
Yep.
Well, there's a large Wicker population on Cowell Island.
Oh, is there?
What I wanted to say is I was staying out there at Cowell a few years ago with my daughter and her son. And these bloody things, these Wickers are nasty little creatures. And they can spread bloody botulism and hydatids and all sorts of diseases.
Oh, okay. All right. So they're not the furry fabulous creatures we've been purporting them to be.
They're nasty little things. There's always a bit of fellatio there.
Oh, all right. There we go. The Wickers are not as friendly as we thought, after all. Glenda, good morning.
Janet scored well for General Manner. She demonstrated good conversational skills and was reasonably accommodating of our caller. However, she failed to pick up on a reference to oral sex, which could have easily offended her listeners.
There's always a bit of fellatio there.
Next, a hidden camera trial within a hidden camera trial. When we learned the Target crew was setting up a sting at a friend's house, we decided to get our cameras in first to see just how professional Target's technicians really are. Former Target analyst Ian Orchard agreed to help us. Well, here are Target technicians arriving to set up their cameras in the lounge, testing their cameras.
Yeah, that's working.
Here we are in the kitchen, and they seem to be taking a lot of time to set up the cameras, Ian.
Yes, this is important to take into account the best light possible and to get the right coverage with the room size.
Well, I don't think any camera was meant to be installed in there.
He shouldn't really be looking into the fridge.
They're not exactly in a hurry to install the cameras, Ian.
No, so far they seem very casual, but then again, there's more or less no time limit on doing the job.
Thirsty work, this.
Fuck! What'd you do?
And he's cleaning that up with a T-shirt from the laundry. Now, here's our other technician on the phone, but it's not to his boss.
Hello, Lisa speaking.
Oh, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good, what you up to?
I don't have very much time.
Right, what do you like me to do to you?
Just...
Let me put your in my mouth.
Yeah.
Well, let me slide my lips up and down your heart.
Yeah.
Now, Technician A's got the homeowner's razor, but should he be shaving down there? And Technician B seems to have got off the phone and...
He's got no reason to be going into that room doing that.
Yes, he seems to be rifling through the homeowner's underwear drawer. And now he's looking under the bed. Seems to have found a magazine. Looks as though he's really lost focus here. This doesn't appear to be work-related at all. Surely that's inappropriate.
No, I don't know.
Well, this is a little bit later on, and I recognise this. This is called spotting. They're smoking drugs. And injecting them. Back in the kitchen, he seems to have found his way onto the hob. Should he be using the stove, Ian?
No, he shouldn't be using the stove for anything.
Well, he's certainly using the stove for something. More shaving. He must have missed a spot. Meanwhile, back in the kitchen, Technician B seems to have undressed himself. Completely. He's using a lot of Glad wrap.
Well, that Glad wrap isn't that expensive, but it does belong to the homeowner and not to the technician.
He seems to be in some pain. Here's Technician A looking a little worse for wear. What's he doing there, Ian?
I'd say he's smelling the flowers.
Surely that's inappropriate.
Well...
Now this doesn't look promising.
Here come my pussy! Here come my pussy! Ah!
The toilet is just around the corner. Surely that's inappropriate.
Well...
Surely. That's so inappropriate.
Oh, maybe
That's the most inappropriate thing ever.
No, I don't know.
So they gave Richard the flick, and poor Judy's stuck doing news with some sports guy. It's a shambles. Cafeteria's fucking good though. It's better than ever. Nominated for Best Performance in a Game Show, David Tua.
David, great experiences, obviously, but there was one lighter moment, and that was where you mentioned you were chased around by a Nigerian. Tell us, what was this about?
It's one of funniest moments as long as I live. Being chased around the ring by a 6'5" Nigerian.
Well, what a way to remember Barcelona. Okay, David, here's your first spin of the wheel.
Good one, David.
David Tua. $180 to set you away, David.
O for awesome.
O, a vowel. I'm sorry, no words. Not yet, anyway.
Did you notice Leishman's snort? Still to come, Anita McNaught with Academy Award-winning troublemaker Michael Moore, and Holmes in hot water. A cash for comment. Shocking shocker.
A God, a true God, needs nothing. He has everything. He owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. He has everything. So now you go back and you experiment with this. It's empirical. You give him 10 minutes, and all of a sudden you seem to have an hour back. You give him $10 and $100 worth of blessings. You can play around with this, and you find him. And then, if you seek him, you will find him. And then the fact is, as your heart gets full, the desire goes away for the food. It's filled up. Instead of chocolate cake, you fill it up with God, you get skinny.
George Bush wasn't the only American making waves in London last week. Author and filmmaker Michael Moore was also there, pushing his new book and reminding us that they're not all insane warmongers. With more on that story, here's our European correspondent Anita McNaught. Where you go, love?
They call him the sand in the underpants of the Bush administration. Writer and filmmaker Michael Moore loves a good argument. He's professionally obstreperous. His book on American politics, Stupid White Men, came out a few months after September the 11th. It sold millions. His documentary, Bowling for Columbine, won him an Oscar.
There you go, Mike.
Okay, thank you very much. Wow, that's a nice section.
It is, and it's
you got one
straight shooter.
Wow. Well, here's my first question. Do you think it's a little dangerous handing out guns in a bank?
His ammunition is biting humor. His target is America's right wing. They say he's a traitor to his country. The rest of the world sees him as one of the few sane voices coming out of the United States. We're here because he's written a second book. It's called Dude, Where's My Country? And Michael Moore's in London for the official launch. And here he is, A man whose shambolic demeanour belies a very focused political brain.
Our apologies for being late.
But even he can't figure out why that nice British Prime Minister threw in his lot with George W.
Why is Blair friends with Bush? I can understand why he was with Clinton. Those two guys are like peas in a pod. You know, you could see them in a frat house somewhere. They're both intelligent, and they both seem to, you know, like to listen to spin doctors and pollsters. What's the deal here with Blair and Bush? I mean, when Blair stands beside him, he knows he's standing next to an idiot. Blair's not an idiot, so what's his excuse? I mean, at least I can explain the excuse for Bush. He's not a very bright guy, and he's easily manipulated by those who fund him. What's the explanation for Blair?
These terrible attacks that happen, the terrorism that we see, the destruction, the intent to take innocent life that we see around us in our world today should make us just all the more determined to do what we need to do to restore order and justice, to bring peace and freedom and democracy to people all over the world.
This man will not be intimidated, and neither will I.
Anita McNaught, New Zealand television. What is a small, economically vulnerable country like New Zealand to do when it has major misgivings about American policy? How can New Zealand make a difference?
I can't, actually. Yeah.
Because we'd like to. We'd really like to.
Well, no, and we appreciate the support. You know, and I've met some very fine people from New Zealand. One of the producers of Bowling for Columbine was from New Zealand, and so I've always had very good feelings about New Zealand. Thank you for not being a member of the coalition of the willing. I mean, the coalition of the bribed and coerced. It was very courageous thing to do. The British government didn't have that kind of courage. The Australian government didn't have that kind of courage. But the New Zealand government said, no, we're not participating in this, the same way the Canadians did. It's very impressive to see that. So you need to keep being that way, and you know, it's noticed and it's appreciated by people like me in America.
Can you ridicule this president out of office?
Yes.
Is your laughter mightier than the Republican checkbook?
All laughter and all ridicule is mightier than any politician, and certainly many of you, or you know, ancestors of yours, taught us that a long time ago. So it's my hope that humor will be a very powerful political weapon in the next 12 months in removing Bush.
Is that how long we have to wait for the Great American Awakening?
Yes, you have to wait 12 months because there won't be an impeachment, and you can't call for an election. You know, the only thing that we could get rid of him is a mass arrest for war crimes in the White House, and just lead them all out in handcuffs, which is what I personally would like to see. Chances of that happening are about zero.
But Moore never thought he'd win an Oscar for Bowling for Columbine either. That being said, when he got up there, he didn't exactly pull his punches.
We are against this war, Mr. Bush. Shame on you, Mr. Bush.
You know, when I went on the Oscar stage and said what I said, it may have been booed by a handful of executives that were sitting there in the auditorium that night, but the American people, it was like a relief. Somebody finally said what everybody was thinking, and they responded in a very positive way to me. 9 out of 10 people that would stop me on the street were very thankful.
So you can feel the rumblings of a revolution?
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Each gun makes lots of battle sounds.
Bowling for Columbine paints a picture of America imprisoned by its own paranoia, while remaining blind to the harm the country's doing to the wider world. At the message from the books, and Moore is now by far the most influential left-wing commentator in the United States. Perhaps, right now, the world. A liberal tour de force in a country where liberal leaders have been conspicuous by their silence. Here in London, locals and American expats alike can't get enough of him. The new book sold more than 1 million copies in the first month. Dude, Where's My Country is a call for ordinary Americans to get off their backsides and reclaim their democracy. Moore's reclaiming the language too. He wants regime change.
If we don't get rid of Bush, if Bush is in there another 4 years, the United States and the rest of this world is going to be in deep trouble. Everyone knows that. And so I'm committed right now to spending the next 12 months in doing whatever I can do to lead people, to organize people, to inspire them, to whatever, to rally the troops, get them out there, and get rid of this guy. And I think we've got a very good chance of that happening. I'm weirdly optimistic.
I'm Anita McNaught reporting from London for Eating Media Lunch.
Thanks, Papa. And Michael Moore's book, Dude, Where's My Country, is out now, published by Penguins.
One of my favourite school memories is going behind the bike sheds to light some fags. You know, setting fire to queers. Took me ages to get rid of those burns. Just kidding. I'm not really a fag.
In breaking news this hour, hundreds perish in a methamphetamine lab explosion.
Oh, look. I've just manufactured some pee.
Still to come. Have you ever done a Darren McDonald? To the celebrity share market now. The Pigs raid Ray Parker after a domestic, down slightly. Ingham Twins up after a Woman's Weekly cover. They say Malaysian climate no good for skin. Teen terror Jonathan Marshall's up after telling the Sunday News he wants to be a PI. Nikki Watson's Chihuahua made the Women's Day. And Han Shandy Dye continues to slide. Like it or not, sponsorship of TV shows is here to stay. These days, even current affairs and news programs are brought to you by some bank or car company or orange juice. There's nothing unusual about having a sponsor's name at the beginning and end of a show, even here on state TV. But who noticed this on last week's Holmes program? Like they used to say on Sesame Street, one of these things is not like the others.
Next on the program, the sanitarium staff and the good works. But again, as we come to terms with the weekend's loss, with our heartbreak this weekend, some more things to feel good about in New Zealand.
It's the happy, happy, joy, joy song.
They said to me, don't run out of smiles till we get all your photos done. I said, there's no chance of that.
Peter Jackson, Richard Taylor and the Lord of the Rings people. Charlie's orange juice, very nice juice. Summer's coming, Christmas is weeks away.
If this is just the beginning of a new marketing trend at TVNZ, it won't be long till Judy Bailey is pushing biomags in the 6 o'clock news. Perhaps Kim Hill wouldn't mind dressing up as a giant M&M. Or maybe Goldstein could do the weather. And speaking of shameless advertising, we'd like to thank a viewer in Nai, who sent in this tape, reminding us that the word cheeky has long been a Holmes family tradition.
Oh, Paul was hopeless at sport. He was a talker, performer, still is. When I watch Paul asking some of these questions on television, I get really worried. I thought Dennis Conlon was going to hit him.
Nutritious, delicious, and packed with protein.
Well, Paul was an ordinary child. He was perhaps a bit cheeky, but not cheeky.
Kiwis have been growing up great on the taste of Wattie's baked beans for generations.
And that's Mrs. Holmes tonight.
Some blame Keith Quinn. Others say it's Foxy's inverted sideburns or Helen Clark's childlessness. Whatever the cause, there's no doubt that a marketu is keeping us from winning the World Cup. But we can now reveal a startling new theory as to why we weren't there. In 1999, while New Zealand were being beaten by the French, Sky TV was showing the movie Anaconda. 4 years on, and the curse of the snake struck again. This time the movie was on TV3, at exactly the same time as the All Blacks were being squeezed by the Wallabies. Another theory gaining traction was highlighted in a letter in Saturday's New Zealand Herald.
Now listen, we all know this nation is being held to ransom by a group of so-called indigenous peoples whose blood is so watered down it's almost transparent. The relationship between women at the top and the demise of our spirit has to have some correlation. Let's face it, most women can't take the lid off a jam jar, yet they're experts on everything. As for the All Blacks, it's not the loss but the wimpish way they did it. So what's the answer? Just look across the Tasman and take a leaf out of their book. How many women have been the Prime Minister of Australia? Reg Dempster, Albany.
Did you find that you got a lot of chicks?
I've had a few offers around the town from ladies who are old enough to know what they're talking about, who have invited me into their bedrooms, but I don't have any illusions. They really just want me to fix the dodgy switch on the light bulbs.
Oh, sure they do.
Or the bedside lamp.
I bet they do. Have you ever done a Darren McDonald?
Oh, not since smoking pot in Vietnam. It's about the worst I've ever had.
You didn't used to go on the show just shockingly wasted out of your brains?
Once. I went, it was the night after, or the day after the very first episode of Target went to air, and we went to Molly Malone's in Courtney Place to celebrate after we'd watched the first production. And I have no idea how I got back to my hotel that evening. And the next morning I was somewhat the worst for wear.
And that's our show. Next week, the story of the cartoonist who lost his job, protesting at Parliament, and our media dog shares the limelight with a cat. From all of us here at Eating Media Lunch, see you. At number 98.
Mr. Jones is currently staying at his holiday home just north of Turangi.
Haven't we all come a long way since 1985 when Bob Jones smacked over Rod Vaughan?
So we chartered a helicopter to try and find him. It was our intention to interview him about the events over the past few days regarding the decision to put New Zealand's third most popular political party into recess. Mr. Jones was in the lower reaches of the Tongariro River. As we arrived overhead, he left the river and we landed on the river bank. But before we could speak to him, Mr. Jones ran out of the trees and towards the camera.
Get the out of here! Get out of here!
Well, this is where we found Bob Jones, by the banks of the river here, and this is what we got for our troubles.
Meanwhile, Mr. Jones went back into the bush.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.